So everyone, the Premier's going to have some opening remarks, then you'll take questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Obviously, I'm disappointed with today's ruling, but it is only one step in the battle against the Trudeau carbon tax. We will be closely reviewing today's ruling, and it will be appealed to the Supreme Court of Canada. I note that today's ruling was a 3-2 split decision, with two judges providing a detailed dissenting opinion that the carbon tax is, in fact, unconstitutional. So there are strong grounds for an appeal. Other provinces are proceeding with their own court challenges. In Ontario, in New Brunswick, in Manitoba, and in all likelihood, Alberta. Saskatchewan plans to intervene in each of these cases. But ultimately, the fate of the Trudeau carbon tax will be decided in the federal election this fall. Over the past year, we have seen 3 provincial elections where the carbon tax has been the ballot question. In every case, the party supporting the Trudeau carbon tax has lost. And the party standing up for its citizens by opposing the Trudeau carbon tax has won. I expect it will be a ballot question in the upcoming federal election. So my message today is this. Our fight will continue on behalf of the vast majority of Saskatchewan people who oppose the ineffective, job-killing Trudeau carbon tax. I want to thank all of the organizations and the provinces that intervened on Saskatchewan's side. I want to thank Sask Power and Sask Energy. I want to thank the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, the International Emissions Trading Association, and I want to thank Premier Doug Ford and the Government of Ontario, Premier Blaine Higgs and the Government of New Brunswick, and Premier Jason Kenney and the Government of Alberta, who intervened when they were the official opposition. And I also want to thank Saskatchewan Justice, and in particular, our 2 outstanding constitutional lawyers who presented Saskatchewan's case. Despite today's ruling, I believe that Mitch McAdam and Alan Jacobson delivered a clear, a thorough, and a well-researched case on the constitutionality of a Trudeau carbon tax. And I'm confident that they will continue to deliver a strong argument on behalf of Saskatchewan in front of the Supreme Court of Canada. And I remain hopeful for a different outcome. I also want to thank all of our Saskatchewan small business owners, our farmers, our energy sector workers, and to each and every one of our hardworking Saskatchewan families, thank you for your support. We will continue to stand with you in the fight against this carbon tax. As I said on the day that we launched this court challenge, provinces are not subsidiaries to the federal government. Saskatchewan has the authority to implement our Prairie Resilience Plan to fight climate change, to reduce emissions, and to do it without a carbon tax. Unfortunately, this court did not agree. But as I said, today's ruling is just one step in the battle. The fact remains that the Trudeau carbon tax is bad economic policy, it is bad environmental policy, and our fight against it will continue. Thank you, and I'll take any questions. I'll maybe let you speak to the timelines, Minister.
Yeah, there's a timeline prescribed in the legislation. We've got a short period of time, 30 days roughly, to file the notice of appeal. Our lawyers have indicated that they feel strongly about it, and I think some of the work is actually underway already. Ideally, it would be great if the Supreme Court could hear it before the federal election, but it's unlikely they would render a decision before then.
Mr. Premier, why pursue the Supreme Court appeal and not just wait for the federal election to decide the fate of this?
For a number of reasons. One is we have a 30-day window, as the minister had indicated, to file an appeal. Two, this was a split decision. There are two judges on this panel that have indicated that, in fact, this tax is not constitutional, and there is good grounds for an appeal. And we have always said that we would entertain the thought of going to the Supreme Court if we were not successful in this decision, and we are going to do that, most certainly, given the split decision that we see before us here today.
But how is that fiscally responsible? Because you're spending taxpayer dollars to do this. So why do this instead of just waiting?
The constitutional branch at the Ministry of Justice has been utilized for our entire case that we have put forward, the arguments that we have put forward, the incremental cost to Saskatchewan people to argue against what we believe is an unconstitutional tax here in the province is zero. The incremental cost is $0 to the taxpayers of the province. What is a cost to the taxpayers of the province is actually the implementation of the Trudeau carbon tax.
With other provinces challenging as well as Ontario, Brunswick, and Manitoba, Alberta eventually. When they look at this 3-2 decision, how do you think they're going to look at those two when you're looking at their own arguments and what comes down there?
The other courts? How will the other courts?
All the other courts.
You want me to speak on behalf of judges in other provinces?
What do you think? What do you think they're up? What do you think when they see this decision? Yeah. What do you think they'll?
Well, I think, in fairness, when Canadians, I will speak to, look at this decision, they will look at it as a very close split decision. We have 3 judges that, in fact, felt that climate change is an existential threat. I don't think really, for the most part, I don't think Canadians are going to argue with that. What we see are 2 judges that don't feel that the POG powers actually should be able to be utilized in this case under the Canadian Constitution. That's what we believe. We believe that we have the opportunity without a carbon tax to continue down the path that Saskatchewan has ventured now in ensuring that we can reduce our emissions through our plan of prairie resilience, reduce our emissions through our targets in the electrical generating sector, reduce our emissions through our methane action plan, continue to do right by the environment, do right by climate change and sharing the innovation and technology that we have with the rest of the world. We can do all of that without taxing the hardworking families here in the province of Saskatchewan. We actually, our plan that we have put forward, the federal government has accepted. They have moved farther in simply taxing the hardworking families and working people here in the province of Saskatchewan. We don't feel that's necessary.
How do you characterize it as a split decision, even though it was 3-2, because the dissenting judges focused on specific areas, as you put it, but the overview, if you read it, it seems rather strong. Obviously, that's opinion as opposed to anything else, but the really clear direction lies in terms of saying that no, under POG, under other elements, the federal government has a right to do this.
That is the majority decision. The dissenting decision actually doesn't think this is possible under the Constitution. So that is why we will be filing our appeal with the Supreme Court of Canada. We'll be doing it within the timeframes allowable. We'll be doing it proudly on behalf of the people of this province. All the while, we'll be making the efforts, as we have been, to implement our prairie resilience plan to ensure that we are doing right by the environment, we are doing right by climate change with our industries here in Saskatchewan.
I mean, it sounds like that you would basically be taking this to the Supreme Court if there's a 5-0 decision or not. I take it you're not swayed by anything you've heard from the majority rule.
Well, I think the fact that this is a split decision, most certainly the expectation of the people of this province is that we would take it to the Supreme Court.
Why take it to the Supreme Court of Canada? Why not respect the Saskatchewan Court of Appeals decision?
As you read the Saskatchewan Court of Appeals decision, you'll see that it actually is a split decision. We have 3 judges and 2 judges. 2 judges believe that this decision, that the federal government actually doesn't have the constitutional authority to do what they're doing. The fact of the matter is again. We have a federal government that has put forward a policy that has resulted in a split decision in this court. Most certainly, it's of our belief that the people of this province would expect us to take that further, to take it to the Supreme Court of Canada. But ultimately, as you said, we are going to go down that path. The incremental cost is zero. The incremental cost to Saskatchewan residents, if we do not do this, can be very large in the fact that they would have to pay an escalating carbon tax, not just today, but for days into the future, that does nothing for reducing emissions in our province here and in many other areas of the nation. Saskatchewan people expect us to do this, but ultimately, this is going to be decided in this fall's federal election at the ballot box.
What message do you want to send to the protesters who are outside the lunch today? There were hundreds, many of them who are young students who can't vote yet, all calling it a win today. What message do you want to send to them?
We should have a conversation with all people in this province and all people in all industries in this province and across the nation on what we can effectively do to actually reduce our emissions, enhance our sequestration opportunities, so that we can actually make a difference in a global challenge, global climate change, rather than imposing a tax on the hardworking families of this province and other provinces in this nation that is largely proved to be ineffective in other areas of the world. We continue to have the wrong conversation about how to tax hardworking Canadian families, as opposed to how we can work together to actually address
Why
climate
did
change.
you not have that conversation with kids today then, or whoever was out in front? I know there's no one there from government to speak to. You weren't there. You're very critical when Brian Miley would speak to the anti-carbon tax rally the other day, yet you chose not to speak to one department.
I was poring over a court decision this morning.
Sorry?
I was looking at a court decision this morning.
But nobody in government could.
Pardon me?
But no one in government could go speaking, like not everyone's obviously.
I think there was actually government individuals out there.
I don't think anybody spoke to the crowd.
Well, there was government individuals out there.
Did anybody speak to the crowd?
I don't know.
I don't
You
think you
could,
did.
okay.
And the point being is that you were critical of Brian Miley for not being there, for not speaking to the crowd. I think Mr. Doherty was out there as speaker. So that's only government.
No, I think there was other government individuals out there.
Has
So-
Minister Duncan spoken to Minister McKenna? Are you going to be instructing the province to reach out to the federal government over this decision at all?
We have always been open to working with our federal government when it comes to what opportunities we have to address climate change in this province. I was open and remain open as Environment Minister, also as Premier. Minister Duncan has always been open. The fact of the matter is how this carbon tax actually was implemented. It was forced on the provinces across this nation on October the 3rd, 2016 by the Prime Minister of Canada. We will continue to use every tool in our toolbox to ensure that it is not going to be charged on the hardworking families of Saskatchewan, simply because it does not work. The only effectiveness this tax has is ultimately moving jobs out of our jurisdiction into other areas of the world, and we won't stand for that. Sorry.
Can we get some questions over here, please?
Go ahead, Dan.
Mr. Morgan, with the decision referencing the Vancouver Declaration as kind of overarching factor in this, do you believe that the province signing on the declaration and examining the price of carbon was a de facto agreement to have a price on carbon?
No, I think we want to look at every possible avenue that we can and should to look respectfully at ways of reducing carbon emissions. I think where you're going with the question is the argument that was advanced by the British Columbia Attorney General seemed to be one of the things that Chief Justice Richards relied on, was the argument that BC put forward, and those are the legal intricacies that'll be argued before the Supreme Court in Ottawa. But I don't think our support of wanting to work with other jurisdictions should be taken as either acquiescence or that we've taken a position one way or the other. The position the Premier has taken and our province has taken is that a tax on carbon is not an effective tool at reducing emissions. We want to see emissions reduced, but in a careful, precise way, and not through a tax that damages the women and men and families in our province.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Morgan, with the ruling that said it wasn't really a tax, it was more of a charge, because a tax would bring in revenues to the government, to the people. It also said it doesn't really look at whether this is good or bad policy, whether the act itself is solid constitutionally. What argument do you see going forward that the majority didn't touch on?
Well, you saw there was a split decision. There was a strong decision coming out of the minority. The minority said that this as a tax is an unconstitutional tax. I mean, they relied on the argument that was put forward by Saskatchewan Constitutional Team. The federal government advanced and said, and it was everything done under the peace order and good government argument, and we accept that was what was heard by Chief Justice Richards. We disagree with that. We think it's an unnecessary and perhaps inappropriate enlargement of that, but I don't want to be critical of the court, and would certainly wait and see what the Supreme Court has to say, but we want to explore our options in the Supreme Court. I think ultimately we'll be successful.
Just if I could add to the Vancouver Declaration for 1 moment. We did sign that agreement, as that was the last, that was the last agreement on climate change that was signed by all of the provinces and territories in this nation. It was also an agreement that looked at 4 different working groups at what we could do as a nation, as provinces, provincial and territorial jurisdictions to act to meet Canada's commitments at the Paris Accord. We signed that document in good faith, and it also indicated in that document that there would be an understanding that each jurisdiction across the nation is very, very diverse in how their economy operates and functions and generates wealth. Also, how that jurisdiction actually generates their emissions. Have an understanding with respect to the diversity across the nation of Canada. We signed that document because in good faith as we entered into the conversation about how we can do better in this province. And I think if you look at the plans that we have put forward and the effort that we had put forward in recognizing what we are doing in agriculture, what we are doing in our manufacturing industry, and the targets that we are putting forward in our electrical generation industry, our methane emissions, and our plan of prairie resilience, we most certainly have acted in good faith with respect to the Vancouver Declaration, of which we signed. The next document that was asked to be signed by all of the provinces and territories across the nation was the Pan-Canadian carbon tax framework. The fact of the matter is we didn't agree with putting a tax on the hardworking families in this province. We did not sign that document, have not signed it to date. So the Vancouver Declaration was the last actual Pan-Canadian document that was signed by all of the provinces and territories in this nation.
Last question.
Mr. Morgan, just with the going back to the tax versus regulatory charge argument, do you anticipate any need to be revising those arguments just given the tight nature of the court's decision, or will it be presented essentially the same way as in the Supreme Court?
You know, our lawyers and the lawyers from the other jurisdictions will look at the context of what was written, and they'll decide whether they want to advance exactly the same argument or whether they'll make some variations on it. You know, our argument was it was a tax, it wasn't a regular charge, and you know, that's certainly the primary position we put forward, but we'll certainly want to look at every option that we have and then have some consultation with some of the other provinces that will be intervening as well against the tax.
Thanks very much, everyone.
I'll just make a comment on that, Jim, before we go. With respect to the arguments that we see forward coming from the different provincial jurisdictions, there are some different variances with the reference questions that are being generated. With respect, we'll be intervening in each and every one of those. The fact of the matter is this. This is game 1. And we were unsuccessful in game 1. We have game 2 in Ontario. We have game 3 in another province, game 4 in another province, likely game 5 ending in Alberta. And the fact of the matter is the end of this playoffs will ultimately be decided in game 7, which will be the Supreme Court of Canada. I have an answer to a question that was asked by the federal environment minister just a few minutes ago with respect to asking premiers across this nation to stop blocking climate action. No one in this nation should confuse climate action with a carbon tax. The two are very, very separate. And let me answer that question to the federal environment minister. In Saskatchewan, we always have, and continue to use and ensure that we use each and every tool in our toolbox to block yours and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's ineffective carbon tax on hardworking Saskatchewan families, while we in this province continue with our fight against climate change. Thank you.